Hi, and welcome to this next set of videos. Today we will be talking about minerals, and we will also cover osteoporosis. So we talked about vitamins last week and where they came from, where they come from, how we learned about them, some of the things that they can prevent as far as diseases and ailments. How are vitamins and minerals different? What is a mineral? So a vitamin, as you know, contains a carbon, so it's an organic living mineral that can be changed and altered in the presence of heat and such. But what is a mineral? So a mineral is a chemical. They are chemicals that the body needs to function properly. They come entirely from the earth and they always retain their chemical identity, unlike vitamins. So there is a list of major minerals, which we need in larger quantities. And there's a list of smaller minerals, trace minerals, which we need in smaller quantities. Both are important, and we will specifically talk about just a couple of them. So where do we get our minerals? They're coming from the earth, and the things that we consume are only going to be as nutritious as the soil which they are growing in. And so if we had done our talk on chapter 12 on sustainability, we would have talked a bit about farming methods that are good for the earth, good for the environment, but also because they are good for the earth and because they are good for the environment, they also have lots of microbes growing in this soil that are able to then feed that which is growing in the soil to make it more nutrient dense, which is why some of the vegetables and such that are growing in this deeper, darker purple and deeper, darker reds, the deeper, darker color that they are, in general, the more nutrient dense that they are. So when we are cooking foods, we're leaching out some vitamins and such. But minerals are not changed when they're exposed to the elements. When they are in the soil, when they're in our food, when they're in our body, when they're coming out of our body, they're not changed into anything else. So we're going to take a brief pause here, and we're going to review what would have been our thought of the day. It's a precious time for me when you guys are reflecting and writing and whatnot, but I will go through it verbally. So our thought of the day is regarding our faith and the challenges that we go through. We will be reflecting specifically on Mark 4:41. The Bible verse that says, "If the wind had not blown, these disciples would never have asked, 'Who is this?' Even the winds and the waves obey him." So how strong would our faith be if we never went through anything difficult? Imagine a world without wind. Lakes would be calm, falling leaves wouldn't blow in the streets, but in still air, who would expect trees to suddenly fall over? That's what happened in a 3-acre glass dome built in the Arizona desert. Trees growing inside a huge windless bubble called the Biosphere 2 grew faster than normal until suddenly collapsing under their own weight. Project researchers eventually came up with an explanation. These trees needed wind stress to grow strong. Jesus let his disciples experience gale force winds to strengthen their faith. This is coming from Mark 4:36 through 41. During a night crossing of familiar waters, a sudden storm proved too much even for the seasoned fishermen. Wind and waves were swamping their boat while an exhausted Jesus slept in the stern. In a panic, they woke him. Didn't it bother their teacher that they were about to die? What was he thinking? Then they began to find out. Jesus told the wind and waves to be quiet and asked his friends why they still had no faith in him. So today, in a life that would be in a protective bubble, it might sound good. But how strong would our faith be if we couldn't discover for ourselves his reassuring, "Be still," when the winds of circumstances howl? We need stress to grow. The situations we have gone through in life have somehow prepared us for future situations. No need to write anything down, but I want you to consider how differently you would be as a person if you had always lived in a bubble and had never experienced any strong winds. This ties with our discussion on minerals today, as we're going to talk about osteoporosis and how stress helps us to grow stronger. We need to be applying stress to our physical bodies so they can grow stronger and are more prepared and capable of protecting us in the future. I hope you enjoyed those 2 videos as I talked through our devotional. So calcium, we will start with the major mineral, calcium. I would like you to get a pen or a pencil and you're going to do some calculations. 2% of our body weight is in calcium. so in our bones and our teeth. So I would like you to calculate how much calcium you have in your body right now. So calcium acts as a bone builder. It's necessary to move our muscles, it helps with blood clotting, and it helps to fire the nerves. It's in dairy products. We think of calcium in milk and dairy products quite a bit. Why do we find so much calcium in dairy products? Well, think back to where minerals come from, because the grass that cows eat, the products that the cows eat, come from calcium-rich soil. But remember that dairy products, although they're high in calcium, they are also high in saturated fats and cholesterol. So there are other options such as dark green leafy veggies, which are high in calcium. Fortified products are high in calcium. Orange juice is high in calcium. Next thing, pause this and quickly draw a picture. What do you think our bones look like on the inside? So what do our bones look like? So bones are not a solid calcium. They're this living, growing thing with a soft core. They have the hard framework of calcium and phosphate. That core in the middle is that marrow, which helps produce the blood cells. So 99% of the calcium that we have in our body resides in our bones. And throughout the year, our body is cleansing out the old and bringing in the new. So osteoclast is removing the old bone and tissue. Osteoblast is creating new bone structure. So right now at this point in your life, you are doing more osteoblast, more growing of new bones than you are doing of osteoclast, getting rid of the old bones and replacing the old bones and such. So it's a living organism. Our bone is a living organism. It's constantly breaking down its older framework and replacing it. However, this production, this formation of new bone, it becomes outpaced by the destruction around age 30. So around age 30, bone destruction slowly overtakes the formation. So our net bone loss begins to happen around age 30. Now, obviously, there are things that we can continue to do to continue the process of osteoblast, of the building up of new bones, but osteoclast is going to be happening, similar to protein synthesis. As we get older, we're not synthesizing protein as well. So after your 20s, around age 30, you have to spend the calcium reserve that you have in order to prevent or to prolong the effects of osteoporosis. So what are some of the things that you're doing now that are helping to grow and to strengthen your bones? So here's a picture of some bones, the normal one, the osteoporotic one, normal matrix, bone matrix, osteoporotic one, many more gaps and holes that could allow for it to be broken. So once we turn around 30, and this is kind of a general number, our skeleton is outpacing or tossing out the bone faster than we can replace it. So remember, osteoclast is the removing of the old bone and tissue. Osteoblast is building the new bone and tissue. So osteoporosis is something that is occurring around the world. So I'll focus on some facts here in the United States. So around 10 million people in the US have this disease, and the vast majority of them are women. And then another 34 million have osteopenia. And osteopenia is like the precursor to osteoporosis. So it's a low bone density mass, and it's something that we see in elderly people. We see it in more females, 1-to-3 ratio, compared to males, 1-to-5 ratios, which can result in fractures causing then a fall to happen. So the fall isn't what always causes the fracture. Sometimes it's a bone breaks or stops being as strong, and then because of that decrease in strength, we'll see the falls happening. So this is an example of a female, an elderly female, who has what's known as the Dowger's hump, resulting from small bone fractures, usually in the upper vertebrae. Here's a picture kind of showing you the progress of this as it continues to happen. So as the fractured edges of the vertebrae compress, the vertebrae continues to kind of curve, and which is when we then see that hump there. So why does this happen, and how can we prevent it from happening? who do we see osteoporosis occurring in more likely? So females are more vulnerable. So their bone loss is accelerated in the first few years after menopause because estrogen is a stimulator of bone growth, and estrogen severely decreases post-menopause. Also, small, thin bone women are greatly at risk. But there's also other factors that are included. So your familial heritage, if you have a family history of osteoporosis, if you have had eating problems for long periods of time and not taking in enough minerals. Remember then, number 4 is bolded, calcium and vitamin D. So vitamin D helps us to absorb and utilize calcium better. So when we're not taking in vitamin D and calcium, we're not able to utilize the calcium. We're not able to continue growing our bones and strengthening our bones. The use of certain medications, cigarette smoking, alcoholism, but inactivity also. We are so in charge of the amount of activity that we do, and activity can put stress on our physical bodies, and then that stress in small amounts then causes our body to say, hey, I'm getting stressed here. I need to then make this spot stronger. So exercise, there are a lot of different things that we can do, even when we're walking. Even when we're running, even when we're jumping. I mean, you can think of more demanding and more stressful activities that are going to help prevent or slow the progression of osteoporosis. So strength training is one of the best things that we can be doing now prior to 30. Build up those levels of calcium so that when you hit around 30, when you are breaking down faster than you're building, you have a higher net reserve. So inactive people, you're losing bone mass. Your body says, hey, you're not really doing too much, so we don't need to continue strengthening them. Astronauts, think of astronauts. They have no stress on their body, physical stress on their body at all. When they come back, if they've been up in space for quite a long time, they have pre-osteoporosis. I mean, they have very, very low bone density when they're coming back. So usually at this time, I have 2 people come up and they create a bridge where they put their arms together, and then I very lightly pound, 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 and then we have 2 more people put another arm on top, on bottom, and then I pound, 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 pound. And the areas that our body sees stress, it reacts by making it stronger, right? You don't want your bridge to collapse, so you put a lot of strength in the areas where you're going to have a lot of pressure. So when we're putting pressure and we're applying stress to our body, a healthy amount of stress, our body reacts by getting stronger. So let's look at this next slide here. So bone calcium loss throughout lifetime. So this is kind of just a generic number here, the critical amount of calcium. If you have anything less than this, you're going to be much more likely to have fractures. So then look at here. So here's a person who has a pretty sedentary life and a low calcium consumption. So around 30, you start going down. Osteoclast occurs more rapidly than osteoblast. And by the time they're in their mid-50s, they're already in this dangerous area of potentially having osteoporosis. Compared then to somebody who's been really active their whole life, maybe they're walkers, maybe they're dancers, maybe they're strength and conditioning, maybe they're doing HIIT or CrossFit, maybe they just are on their feet a lot. They are then increasing the amount of calcium within their bones, the calcium deposited within their bones. So when they're around 30, they still start to see a decrease, but look, they have so much more that it's going to take them a really long time before they're at those dangerous levels. And during this time, we don't just sit and do nothing. We continue to build so that we continue to elongate to prevent us from getting us into this area where we're more likely to have osteoporosis. So bone-saving options. Make sure that you consume foods high in calcium and vitamin D. Remember, they complement each other. Vitamin D helps us to absorb the calcium that we would otherwise be flushing out in our urine. And we want to end with this. So we want our bodies to be as healthy as they can, our bones to be as healthy. We want to be putting stress. So think of things that you can do even in your own home with just the space of your own body within whatever room you have available. You can be doing body weight exercises that are putting stress on your bones that allow you to prolong the effects of osteoporosis. Okay, that's the last slide for this video.